everybody. Well, we're still here. We made it. Hope your holidays were nice and relaxing. And I'm sitting and looking at the charts for the week. We're going to talk about the week of December 29th through January 4th. I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology, and this is my weekly forecast, the Path Ahead. I'm not going to share the charts. I need to just go with the flow of what I want to share. And I feel like, what's the point of showing the charts anyway? I know a lot of you listen on the podcasts, our narratives, and those of you that watch on YouTube, hopefully you're okay with just listening or watching my face. Anyway, make sure that you like and subscribe, leave a comment, like whatever you need to do to engage the algorithm so that you continue to see these forecasts. And my style is a little bit psychology, a little bit spirituality, and a lot astrology. And as we've been going through the last several years, and especially the last few months, the message is coming loud and clear that it's more important to just share what's coming through as opposed to point out dynamic by dynamic of what's happening in the sky. So I'm still going to share some of that with you, but we're just not going to look at the charts. So go ahead and just take a deep breath and land. It's been pretty intense. And one of the things that's been happening is that this weirdness just keeps on going. It's not ending, and there isn't a lot of resolution. But I think that's the point, because think about when you're forced to just continue to endure something and the process that you have to go through to get through. It reminds me when I spent several years in a spiritual school. One of the things that we would do is we would listen to the talk and then we would split into small groups and do exercises together, do inquiry. One of the assignments that we would get is to do something called a monologue. So if it's a group of three, everybody gets 20 minutes to talk. And you have to talk the whole time. And nobody's reflecting. Nobody's giving you answers. You don't stop to get somebody's feedback or to hear what somebody else has to say. And of course, it starts to wear on you at about minute 5 because you're saying to yourself, I don't have anything else to say. What am I going to talk about? But when you can just persevere and make it through, the wisdom that begins to come out is the wisdom that your soul is trying to convey to you. So, as we're in this really strange time period where it seems like the deep stuff just keeps bubbling to the surface, not a lot of resolution, more stuff, like it's here for a reason. And the longer it hangs around, the more you're compelled to try to understand it. And that's what we're doing. So, of course, we can liken this to all of the Pisces energy. I've been talking about this for the past few weeks. That Pisces energy, which is the energy of the spiritual awakening. It's also the energy of fear. And I know a lot of you from talking to you and, of course, having the experiences myself, that when that old unconscious stuff starts boiling to the top, yeah, it can bring up fear because why do things go unconscious? Because we don't want to deal. We don't want to look at that stuff. It hurts. It is associated with past pain. And of course, the idea of bringing it to the surface to examine it, no, I don't want to look at that. It's like when you go to the doctor and you have something that hurts and they're pressing on it, and you're like, ow, stop pressing on it. You're making it hurt more. But of course, the deal is that when we press on it a little bit, then we can figure out what it really is. And I think that it's important that we're looking at this deeper stuff, these old things that are rising up to maybe be healed. And that's best case scenario. And I talked last week about that Chiron Jupiter square that went on for several days, and we're still under the influence of that. And Chiron is the wounded healer. So we are looking at a lot of healing that we're trying to do because that is part of the spiritual awakening process, is that we want to heal. So the people that are very dedicated to being unconscious and they're drinking their beer and they're watching their football and they're buying stuff online and they're gossiping, all of these behaviors that we all do to numb. Some people are really deep in those things and they won't get out of them in this lifetime. They aren't going to heal stuff. They're not going to spiritually awaken and they're not going to heal. And nothing is better than anything else. Been having this conversation a lot over the past few weeks, the different timelines that we all come in on. Sometimes you're in on a straight survival timeline. And maybe when we see people who are without homes, that are struggling in the snow, maybe they're on a survival timeline. Or we see people that have really terrible drug addictions. They're maybe on a slavery timeline. How can I become less enslaved by this drug addiction? I don't know. Maybe that's what their soul came in to experience. A lot of people come in as rest lives. Like, I don't want to deal. I just want to chill out and rest. And some people come in to heal. Some people come in to manage really difficult experiences and do better this time than they did last time. I mean, obviously, we don't really know. This is just something that has been up in my field of awareness of different people doing different things on the planet, which is part of why when we have this huge push for equality, can that ever happen? And who's deciding what equal means? And how do we really know what we've each come in to wrestle with and deal with and endure and experience in each of our lives? Well, of course, we don't know that about everybody else, but we can kind of make some hypothesis about ourselves. And this is a good year to do it with the North Node traveling through Pisces and watching the stuff that's bubbling up to your surface and deciding, do I really want to look at this? And maybe you don't, and that's okay. And maybe you do. And I will encourage you and say that the more that you're willing to look at the most uncomfortable things in your environment right now, the easier it's going to be moving forward. The astrology doesn't get that much easier over the next few years, to be honest, but that's okay because we're all very strong and we can do it. One of the things that I want to talk about for this week is that we have this progression of planets moving into Capricorn. So we have the sun there, Mars is already there, and so is Venus. The sun, Mars, and Venus are traveling really close to one another all through the week. And in fact, next week, we're going to see them start to make conjunctions with one another. So we'll talk about that for next week. And by the end of the week, we're also going to have Juno and Mercury. So that's going to be 5 placements in the sign of Capricorn. Now, Capricorn is an energy that asks us to become masters. So whatever it is that is bubbling to your surface, that is feeling hard, that you don't want to deal with and you don't want to look at, there's an invitation for you to approach these things with more maturity or with more wisdom. Capricorn is that energy that says, this is your life's great work. What are you going to do? How far along are you in your life? Can you look back and say, I feel really proud of how I handled that? Or I feel that that was a real accomplishment for me. That wasn't easy and I did it anyway. Those are Capricorn idioms. And when we look at our lives and we look at the element of Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, belongs in the 10th house. This is the house where we say, what am I leaving behind? What's my legacy? What's my reputation? What am I bringing to this particular life? And how do I want to leave it? So this is something that has been in my field of awareness, this idea of wanting to leave something better than how I found it. You know, we hear that about trails and about nature, pick up your trash, etc. And this is a time period where those things are really powerful. Pick up the trash. The trash is largely a lot of the stuff that you have shoved down into your unconscious because you haven't been able to deal with it. You haven't wanted to look at your own part in it. You haven't wanted to process the pain and suffering that were a result of this thing. It's not to say that when we have trauma that it's our fault that we have a part in it. Sometimes we do. But a lot of times our part simply becomes, are you willing to just be with it instead of shoving it down? Because what we're seeing is that what's rising to the surface are all of the things that are silently running the show. Right? So imagine if you have a core wound of abandonment, imagine how a fear of being abandoned is going to show up everywhere. It's going to show up and it's going to color how you relate to people. It's going to show up and it's going to impact your baseline fears that you have. It is going to make you defensive in different places. It's going to keep your self confidence low. So that's what your higher self is trying to get you to see right now. I'm reminded of like driving in the car and you have gum and you spit it into a wrapper and there's no trash. So you just shove it in the little side pocket in the door and you forget about it. Well, eventually you're in there cleaning out the car and you're like, oh my God, where did all this trash come from? And now the gum has melted and it's all over the pocket. And that's our unconscious. So as we're kind of quote unquote taking out the trash, how do we deal with what we're finding? So we have the option here, and I'm talking about all of this Capricorn energy. Capricorn says take responsibility for it. So I'll use the example of the car door. So I'm pulling out all this trash, and I realize there's gum that has oozed out onto the door, and now it's dirty and it's kind of gross. So my option, and maybe my younger self, would have just pulled the trash out and called it a day. But the more mature, wise way of dealing with it is to go and get your Windex and your paper towels or whatever and clean it out. So then not only is the garbage not there, but you don't have a gross mess left behind. And so that is what all of this Capricorn energy is asking us to do. Now we have Mars in Capricorn, which is exalted. Mars is our energy, it's our action taker. It's also the part of us that has boundaries. So that's another piece of things that rise to the surface. We had trauma that happened to us, and we did not have boundaries. We were not able to defend ourselves, maybe because we were little and we didn't have any power, or maybe because we just didn't know what to do. Mars is saying, you have boundaries now. You can approach this thing from a place of being a strong and solid warrior. Mars in Capricorn is the energy of the general. And we know a general stands up, takes charge, doesn't lose their head, and directs the army to victory. You are here right now to embody your own inner general that says, hold up, I know what I'm going to do. I know how I would like to handle this. I'm going to approach this situation, because when I'm saying things are rising to the surface, really what I mean are situations with people and old childhood dynamics and old power dynamics and just all the old icky stuff that you were kind of hoping just had gone away. Or maybe the things that you've healed, but you only got to a certain level and now here's the deeper level here to be healed. So this is where we embody that general and we say, how am I going to handle this? Am I going to be reactive? Am I going to start a fight? Am I going to point my finger and say, you always do this? That's not very Capricorn. The higher side of Capricorn is strong, solid, holding good boundaries, acting from a place of wisdom and maturity. And then we have the sun in Capricorn. So the sun is our heart. And our heart, when we're listening to our heart, it doesn't lie. Our heart has a lot to say. It would be interesting to spend a little time with your heart this week and just see, like, what kind of roller coaster does your heart ride? And I say this because I have noticed that when I tune into my heart, very often immediately what I feel is anxiety. And then when I go a little bit deeper, I start to feel a lot of things that are very uncomfortable. So we talk about connecting to the heart, and the implication is that it's like, oh, my heart, this feels so good. This feels so tender, so true, so right. But in my personal experience, and maybe in yours too, the heart houses a lot. The heart holds a lot of what we are mentally unwilling to deal with. So you might want to connect in with your heart a little bit this week and just notice what's there. What is going on with my heart in this very moment? And because the sun is in Capricorn and we're gearing up for a full moon, which I'll talk about, it lends us this wisdom and this strength. And once again, this ability to go in and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help? We look at Capricorn as the energy of authority. And a lot of times you have heard me talk, and I know from your personal experience too, that we have a mistrust of authority. We've been taken advantage of by authority, or we've been strong armed or punished. So we do come to the table with baggage around authority. But This is the energy that says you get to be the authority this time. You get to respond to your heart in the way that your heart always wanted, right? Strong, solid, safe, secure. And what would happen if you had a relationship with your own authority that was all of those things? Ooh, it would feel very relaxing and it would be very soothing to your nervous system. Talked about this last week. Imagine if you knew that you were safe, secure, held, that you could relax, that the boundaries were going to contain you in a way that felt like safety. And that's what you can tune into and have a conversation with your heart this week about, hey, I'm here for you. I want to support you. I want to make the kinds of decisions that make you feel like you can relax, like there's safety and security. And then we also have Venus, and Venus is about the value systems. And I talked last week about how Venus and Capricorn is almost always about the karmic relationships. And of course, with Venus, we want to be loved, we want to be valued, and we want to feel safe and secure. Venus rules both Libra, which is love and feeling like we're part of the group, we're accepted, we're desired, we're in good harmony with people. And Venus rules Taurus, which is about literally our safety, our money, our security, our abundance. So with Venus here kind of in the mix, these three are traveling together, Venus, Mars, and the Sun, and they're traveling together all week. So with Venus, then we bring in that part that says, I'm okay. Even if you're rejecting me, I'm okay. Even if I'm not a part of that friend group anymore, I'm okay. Even if I feel like I'm dealing with some sort of lack, not enoughness, I'm okay because I will pull it out. I will make it happen. I will create the safety, security, abundance that I need. So, this is really powerful energy that we're working with. And I also forgot to say that Vesta as well is in Capricorn and has been in Capricorn for a while. But Vesta is the energy of the temple. Vesta says, come into your heart, come into your psyche, into your consciousness, and begin to commune with God, with your higher power. Vesta reminds us that we have to leave everything else at the door. I did some talks on Vesta in my Astrology for Awakening series. I believe there's 4 talks. This is a really cool asteroid to know more about because Vesta in the chart says, where should I focus? What am I supposed to be putting my attention on? How do I create what I want? How do I manifest? And Vesta says, come on into the temple. And depending on the sign and the house that Vesta is in, the energy of the temple changes. But right now, Vesta is in Capricorn, which says, oh, this is the energy of inner authority. So maybe this is your relationship with God. Maybe it's your relationship with your higher power. Maybe it's your relationship with your heart. There's something here that all of this heaviness, all of this chaos, all of this spiritual awakening is doing for us. It's trying to connect us with what is here. So everywhere we look right now, our attention is being pulled by marketers, people that are advertising to us. The government's advertising, they want us to do this and think this, and retailers are advertising, they want us to buy their stuff. Like everywhere that we look, it's just a form of wanting our attention. Our attention is the currency. And the more attention that we're giving out there to all of the dilemmas and all of the problems and all of the hypothetical issues that are going on, the less attention we're giving here to our own heart and our own experience. And that's what we've been hopefully learning over the last few years, is that when it comes right down to it, everything is very manipulated right now. And in order to not be so manipulated, we have to come into our heart, into our gut, into our third eye, and our throat, the top of our head. Every chakra will say that. Every chakra, the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And then there are other chakras as well. But just where all of those glands are in our bodies, those are the places that we are learning to tune into, because at the end of the day, that's what we have. Computers, screens, AI, all of this stuff is manipulating us into buying something, right? So, in order to be as clean and clear, as decisive, and as grounded as possible, we have to really come into awareness of how things impact us and how we feel. And, a lot of times these decisions are not immediate. A lot of times it does take time. We have to spend time in that temple deciding what feels right and what feels real. But all of this Capricorn energy is helping us and saying, be wise. You have wisdom. You know how to do this. You have the answers. So, as we're watching Mercury at the end of the week on the 1st, New Year transition from Sagittarius into Capricorn, that's another thing that we want to hold. Mercury is the mind, and the mind is always off searching for new information. It's gathering the information, and it's impressionable. And if the mind had its way, it would never slow down. But the Capricorn energy, the temple energy, requires us to slow down. We need to get clear on what we're deciding on. We need to get clear on our direction. We need to get clear on the information that's coming in. Is this information that we decide to hold on to? Or is this information that we send on our way? And so there's something here as well about paying attention to the wisdom that's coming through. Because in a society that's very addicted to immediate gratification and has a very short attention span, often we get the answer and then we completely space it out. So we don't want to miss answers right now. We don't want to miss the wisdom. And it is very uncomfortable because we don't want to really deal with our unconscious stuff either. But in dealing with the unconscious stuff, with being brave enough to look at it and say, what is this? This is so frustrating. I can't believe this thing has popped back up, or I can't believe I'm back in this uncomfortable energy with this person. When we're able to just say, what is the wisdom from this? Instead of always scanning ahead saying, when is it going to get better? Well, but how am I going to make this decision that's going to come down in 3 months? Right? Like, ground in, pay attention to what's happening. Capricorn supports us in that. Capricorn says, hey, this is the energy where we have to keep showing up, even when we don't like it, even when the information, even when the experience is boring, even when we are totally over having to deal with something. Keep showing up. Now, on the 3rd, we have a full moon in the sign of Cancer, and it's going to be at 13 degrees of Cancer and Capricorn. It's going to be in a sextile and trine to the nodes, and it will be in a conjunction, the Sun, with Venus and Mars. Full moon, right? Cancer, emotions. There's something that is very familial about a Cancer full moon. It's bringing us straight back into our childhood, into our families of origin, into our families of creation. And there's a balancing point between how we feel, how something impacts us emotionally, especially in the most private confines of our mind. Because when we get our feelings hurt, a lot of times we don't talk about it. A lot of times we don't even want to feel it. We just shove it. It's like the crab, right? I'll just shove it back into my shell and I'll go in my shell and I'll harden up and don't you come near me because I'll pinch you. Okay. So we want to be really aware as this full moon is happening of that crab. And we want to balance it with the sun because the sun is also going to have our warrior, our general, and the part of us that loves, that wants to accept and be accepted, and that's Venus. So this is going to be a beautiful full moon to really pay some attention to. It's going to be happening on January 3rd. So it's going to be a great kickoff to the new year. So before we end, just go ahead and come back into your body, into your heart, and just put your hand on your heart if you can, and see whether you can feel your heart beating. Sometimes it takes a minute. Here's this heart that's constantly going. It's constantly keeping everything running in your whole body. It's like the motor. And it's kind of invisible. We don't even realize it's happening, but it is a powerful practice to tune into your heart, just the physicality of how that beating heart feels as a way to open the door into more connection with your heart. And the more that you can connect with your heart, the more ground you have for processing some of this heavier stuff that's coming up. And again, it's not that 2026 is going to be so hard and heavy. It's not necessarily going to be easier than 2025 was, but it's going to be really different. There's going to be a lot more energy and action. And hopefully, we can cross our fingers, less heaviness, but we're going to be going. So take these last few weeks, really, it'll be about 2 months. Take these last 2 months to be with the silence, the stillness, the knowing, the processing, the wisdom that comes through so that you can hear the messages, so that you can figure out, like, okay, so this is my life path for now. This is my life's great work for now. This is the legacy that I'm working really hard on so that I can complete the mission of my soul and also hopefully do a little good for humanity. All right, you guys, talk to you soon.